Morning, Musa and Hanko.
Morning, doctor. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good morning, doctor.
Good morning, Musa. How are you today?
I'm okay, doctor.
Oh, okay. So I think we can begin. The interest of time as the others join us. Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Doctor.
Morning, Alice, Sam, Lindani, Ked, Nkosi, Nancy, morning.
Doctor, good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I saw some people post, some information yesterday, so I thought maybe because of the holidays, I don't know whether it's a holiday in Uganda, because in Kenya, today is a public holiday.
Actually, yesterday was a public holiday in Uganda.
Oh,
Yeah,
yesterday was a
experience-
public holiday.
Yeah, it was our 61st Independence Day.
Okay.
Yeah, so today's not. It's a working day.
Oh, today is a working day, eh? Yeah, for us, it's a public holiday. But that doesn't mean that we need to take a break, eh? Because we are a bit behind and we need at least to push these lessons. So I think we can begin. Let's begin with a recap. What did we learn last time? Our last topic was on cross-border trade, and that is what we are continuing with. So kindly let us remind those who are not there. Okane, good morning.
Good morning, Doctor. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Were you there last time, the previous lesson?
No, Doctor, I wasn't. I think I was writing that time. Sorry. Should have informed you about my test.
You are writing a test?
Yes.
Okay. So what about those who are there? Musa?
Yes, Doctor, I was there.
You are there. So just quickly remind us some of the issues that we touched base with.
We talked about the non-tariff barriers in the supply chain, where we handled issues that affect the cross-border trade. And among those issues, we talked of the consumer's preference.
How did we define cross-border trade? Maybe you can start by defining what cross-border trade is.
Cross-border trade was defined as a trade between neighboring countries. Countries that share borders. And we talked about the issues that affect the cross-border trade. Among those, we mentioned the consumer preferences, the nation relations, we talked about the food security issues in different countries.
Who can help your colleague, Musa? Lindani, were you there?
Doctor.
Yes, Alice?
Yeah, we also looked at the objectives, like why would bordering countries need to trade with each other? We say there is need to penetrate into the foreign market. That is like, other than having just the local trade, countries need to trade with other countries. And I think cross-border trade is some sort of a starting point. We also looked at, like, there is need for, if there is customers' request, if maybe a customer's request for some products that are not available or produced within that country, so the suppliers may have to get such products from their neighbors to satisfy their local market.
Okay.
We also looked at technology or expertise. If a country does not have the expertise to produce a certain commodity, they may have to get it from their neighboring countries. We also looked at the cost. If the cost of production is high for a certain commodity and probably comparatively cheaper in the neighboring country, you may have to import such a product from your neighbors to minimize the cost.
Okay.
We also looked at the drivers of cross-border trade.
Other
We
than
have looked
that,
at the differences in the production.
thank you,
zones.
Alice. Thank you, Sam.
Yes, Doctor. Actually, we talked about the 4 pillars that complement each other in cross-border trade. I think that's why we ended on that note.
And we also
Yes,
looked
and
at
then
the
we
different
had-
types of cross-border trade, the formal and the informal.
Informal.
What's the difference between the two?
Actually, the formal, there are legal documents that you should possess and legal requirements you should have processed before you engage yourself in such trade. Whereas informal, even if you have no legal requirements or documentation, you can carry on that kind of trade. Yeah.
So it is an illegal kind of cross-border trade, eh?
Yes, Doctor.
So how can cross-border trade be improved?
Doctor, integrate, actually the 4 pillars I think would do much better. One, I remember the pillars very well, but if you look at the
We
4
talked
pillars,
of transparency.
yeah, is it simplification too, and harmonization and standardization?
Yes, eh?
Yeah.
So we talked about trade facilitation, how these partners can cooperate and simplify, standardize, as well as harmonize trade information and documentation. What else? We also have anti-dumping measures. You know, there are countries who normally dump their products to other countries, especially if the products are of low quality, if the products maybe do not meet certain standards, and then they feel that other countries, maybe they won't mind. So as communities, they need to also develop such kind of regulations so that countries do not just dump products. I don't know if you know countries that are fond of dumping products to other countries.
China.
Huh?
China.
China,
Okay, in Uganda, there's a lot of China dumping. I don't know about other countries.
Yes, maybe to the developing countries, who do not really value quality products. But if you go to developed countries, by the way, you'll realize that China produce good quality products. You go to the US, you go to Canada, Europe, you'll find that the products that are from China in those markets are good quality. But Africans, do we really value quality? Are we ready to pay, a premium price for quality?
Majority are not. I think that's why even those business people opt for those cheap products.
Yes, because majority of the people are low income earners, so they cannot afford such kind of goods. How else can we improve cross-border trade? We also talked of tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers. So can you give me examples of these barriers, the tariff and non-tariff? Some of the restrictions that are imposed on the flow of goods and services or trade across these neighboring countries.
I think under the tariffs would look at increasing the duty tax for certain
Increase in duty
commodities.
tax.
Tariffs is basically all those taxes, the customs tax, right?
We also have the import policy barriers. You know, sometimes if you want to maybe safeguard the local market, you impose these policies to deter people from importing, because now importing will be costly. Sometimes you find that local farms are really compromised because of the imports. And some of these imports, they end up even to be cheaper than the local, products. Let me give you an example of Kenya. I know that it's very costly to produce sugar locally. But if we buy sugar from Brazil, it is less costly. So you find that if such kind of sugar gets into the market, of course, it will, be more competitive compared to our local sugar. And that has really affected the sugar industry. Most of our companies are really struggling. I don't know whether you have such cases in your country.
No, doctor, but maybe I just want to know why is sugar production costly in your country? Is it because you don't have the raw materials?
The cost of production, the inputs, very costly. Labor, very costly. Chemicals, costly. So at the end of the day, you find that it is costly to produce sugar. But you know, in Brazil, sugar is a byproduct. By the way, it is not the main product. So, and that is why when it is imported from Brazil, it is cheaper. Because it is not the main product, it's just but a byproduct. So we also talked of competition policy and laws. Sometimes as a government, they need to also introduce these policies to deter some of the malpractices that can affect competition and free trade within these countries. Don't you think competition sometimes can be unhealthy?
Yes, doctor. Especially for the infant domestic companies, industries that are producing, they start competing with import. Okay, the import we call them import substitutes. They produce, they are locally operating and they are producing goods that are also imported. So people resort to importing these goods more rather than supporting the local domestic companies. They may end up actually collapsing. So it's better you put those barriers of more tariffs on imported goods so that you support the domestic companies to grow.
Yes, so it is important to have those laws in place to minimize unhealthy competition. Of course, we have the standards and measures also to ensure that the consumer needs are protected. Whatever goods gets into the market or the country are fit for consumption. So why do you think these non-tariff barriers are important? Of course, we've mentioned a number of them. to safeguard the health and the safety of the consumers, protect our local or home industries. Also, as a national security measures, you know, we also need to be cautious of our security and the revenue. You know, sometimes, especially if we have this illegal trade, we lose a lot as a country in terms of revenues. Just imagine the amount of money that is lost within the Busia, you know, Uganda border. Most people just sneaking in and sneaking out. They are not paying the fees that they should pay. So at the end of the day, we lose a lot of revenues, isn't it? Don't you think so? Hello?
No, that's true, doctor.
Do you think countries lose revenue because of such informal trade?
Yes, doctor.
Now, last
Yes,
time I gave you some assignment to go and think through. What is the future of cross-border trade in a digital world? Maybe before we move to the next slide that is on the public good, let's discuss this question. What is the future of cross-border trade in a digital world? We know that everything is being digitalized, and we are moving to a different era of digitalization. And therefore, with the digitalization, we also expect some changes across the borders. So what is the future? Does the future look bright?
personally for me, doctor, I think the future looks bright. Given the fact that now commodities can arrive in different countries way much quicker, it's now going to be easier to scan if the commodity is right or not. As right now, we spoke about the non-tariff barriers. So in the digital world, it would mean that, let's just say now we are able to scan the fruits or the vegetables or whatever commodity it is, we are able to scan it. Is it well for that country? What is its problem? How can we fix the problem much quicker? Because it's one thing to dump a product in another country, and that will affect the people in that country's their health and their overall well-being. So with digitalization, it will make everything way much quicker.
Thank you very much, Pokane. So you've talked about faster and quicker movement of goods. That is true. And also, it is possible to scan these products as they get into the country to check, verify certain information, the quality checks, and so on and so forth. And this again goes back to, you remember when we were tackling communication management, and some of the tools that are used when it comes to managing information management, sorry. So it will be easier even to manage information because of digitalization. Yes, Nancy?
Doctor, I've made my submission in the chat. I'm in the link.
You are in the library. So Nancy is also making some contribution in the chat that the future of cross-border trade in the digital world is bright, with many opportunities for businesses and consumers alike. The digital economy is growing rapidly, and this is driving increased demand for cross-border trade in digital goods and services. So right now, you don't have to, travel to the neighboring county or another country to transact. you can place your order. You can access, those goods online. You can be able to compare prices, and then you settle on the one which you can afford. And therefore, this makes life easier. And people are also, businesses are able to connect. Consumers are able to connect, with these traders easily. What else? Hanko? Hanko, are you also in the library? I've not heard your voice.
Morning, Prof. No, I am here. I also think the increase of or the future lies also in the fact that we can incorporate traceability systems with digitalization and cross-border trade. Since you've mentioned, we will be able to track where the goods come from, where they are going. And also, it's one of the things that we've now seen with the growing e-commerce fact. If you order something on Amazon, regardless of where you are, in 2 weeks' time, it will be delivered to you and you can track your order all the way. I also think in terms of trade facilitation, digitalization helps quite a lot in the sense that businesses are able to collaborate quite quickly online. It's not necessary that people have to incur the cost of flying places to actually have business-oriented meetings. So cross-country collaboration is also very much simplified in that sense.
Thank you very much, Hanko. So you've talked about tracking the movement of goods. This becomes easier. You are able to track these goods and also order goods irrespective of where you are. And I'm sure a number of us have ordered for products or goods from other countries, and they receive them after maybe a week or so. How many have done that? How many of you have ordered for some goods or products from other countries online?
I have that.
What about the rest? How was it? How was the experience, Hanko?
It was actually very smooth, Doctor, because you could order the item or you could search, for example, on Amazon what you wanted. For me, it was an iPad. You could see what were the specifications that were offered, what were the goods that were available, what were the prices offered by different businesses. From there, I could decide which one I wanted to buy. I put in my credit card details, and then I ordered it. And obviously, because if you I'm not with specific specific companies and so on, or like insurance companies, but I know some of my friends who are with specific companies, they automatically qualify for kind of like next day delivery, but it's priority delivery. So it will be delivered quicker compared to just ordinary delivery. But it took about 2-3 weeks. It arrived, and thankfully there was nothing wrong. It wasn't a scam or something.
There are people who are talking of, being scared, eh? They're afraid of scammers, eh?
I think it's also just important. One thing it allows you, especially with digitalization in this trade, it allows you to also do a lot more like research on the people you are doing business with. I think that's the most important thing that this does, because if we go back to institutional economics, a lot of the ex-ante costs that we would incur as businesses would be to really do a lot of research on our competitors, the people who we'd like to do business with, to really do research on them to see, are they good business people? Do they have a track record for, scamming people? Do they have a track record of being good businessmen? Are they reliable? Are they trustworthy? Are they honest? And now you can kind of do that online, because immediately some of the principal agent issues that we have are addressed by, for example, people being able to rate their experiences. So you can give a company 4 stars, 5 stars, and all of a sudden, everyone who wants to do business with that specific company can say, okay, but they've got a good track record. Yes, they've got 1 or 2 bad comments, but the business can also refute those and also rectify it by offering, credit discounts and stuff like that. So I also think there's many pros and cons to digitalization.
Of course, there are those pros and cons, but of course it has really simplified people's, work. The transactions has been made easier because you are able to access information, and as you have put it, it's normally important that you do a due diligence just to confirm the authenticity of the business and the people who are engaged in the transactions. So the information is available. And in fact, even social media, the way people normally comment on certain organizations about their services, about their products. So if you need information, you can get it, not unless when you are in a hurry. That is when you can land on these scammers. But Nkosi and Nancy, I know you guys, you are really scared of such transactions, eh? Have you ever been conned? Have you been a victim? Nkosi? Nkosi has left, eh? Yes, any other idea or issue regarding the future of cross-border trade? Yes, Sam?
Doctor, I just want to, I don't know if I'm thinking in the right direction when we talk about future cross-border trade. I'm thinking, does it maybe call for investing in high cost technology along border points, like maybe scanners? Whenever you're importing something, you can easily scan the cargo and establish that whatever is on the document is what is exactly you're importing in the cargo. Such facilities, maybe even establishing moisture content dictators or laboratories that are up to standards at border points, just to be sure of the standards of the quality, the standard quality of the products you're exporting. Such kind of, I don't know if I'm in line.
Of course,
and also
this
simplifying
requires
paperwork.
for investment, yes?
Yeah, reducing the paperwork so that maybe just sort of digitalize, don't have to part with a lot of documents along border points. Are we in
You are
that
right.
that kind of direction when you talk of future being more ICT and maybe digitalized, other than just e-commerce?
Yes, that is true because as we think about digitalization, of course, you must invest in technology to support, this digital space. So in that case, most of the, activities that maybe are done when the products have, landed there in the country, these checks can be done at the borders, testing the quality, of the products, the moisture content, as you have put it, and other nitty-gritty details can be done at the cross-border before, these products move to the other, regions of the country. So again, reducing paperwork. Soon we will go, digitalized without carrying any paper. All that you need to do is just, present yourself and maybe log into a system and so on and so forth. So again, this, of course, is expected to reduce a lot of paperwork. I'm foreseeing even a scenario where we'll even stop carrying our visas, our passports. Do you foresee that?
It's possible, Doctor. I mean, if you think about it, at the moment, we can store our bank card on our phone. We can store any of these like shopper point rewards cards and stuff on your phone. So I think that's definitely something that's going in that direction. However, I think the main thing is just how can you how do we ensure the safety? I think that's the bigger thing. At least with your paper passport, people can't necessarily steal it if you keep it very much on your person. However, if your phone is stolen, for example, what I would assume how they could do this passport thing online is there'd be a specific QR code or some or other online code that would identify your passport to your phone or to you. But now the issue is, can you then, use it on multiple devices? So I think there's still a lot to work out in terms of social security for that to be able to happen. Because I think at the moment it's still a little bit.
I know it is tricky,
Yeah.
Because in this space of a digital world, people are also smart, Con men are also, upping their game. But I foresee a scenario whereby, they can even use the fingerprints, they've already taken your facial, photos, and they can be able to identify you at the borders, So this is possible. And just to minimize on, some of the delays normally experienced at the borders, So any other thing that we've left out?
Doctor, I think also the point of controlling corruption or reducing corruption. Yeah, because most of the,
That is right, as I mentioned, countries lose a lot of money through corruption, because this money doesn't get to the government. It is in the hands of a few individuals, those at the border. And especially those who engage in informal trades, they give those guys some tips and they are allowed to sneak in certain goods without going through the checks. And this is a loss to the government. So minimizing corruption can be achieved by introducing, this digitalized space. So I think
Doctor, sorry, just one more question. Obviously, we know that businesses also have to think of like corporate social responsibility. And obviously, with the fact that they have now access to social media, a lot of people look, corporate social responsibility, in my opinion, isn't necessarily just tied to where the business does its main operations, but it's also with where it enters the markets and where it participates in markets to make the places better. So I've been seeing a lot on social media that many companies are now having like these social media challenges where if you tag many people, you then either win a reward or you win prize money, or they then give you a lot of stuff. So I don't know if that counts to the point of corporate social responsibility, and if corporate social responsibility can somehow also be included in this cross-border trade. Because, I mean, if we think about it, if companies are also starting to cross-collaborate, there is some sort of corporate social responsibility that would have to be involved because there's other external benefits that would arise from doing business dealings. Or am I off the plot now?
So just give us an example of a CSR that perhaps you think these companies can engage in.
So, Doctor, for example, so I've seen, like, for example, Pick n Pay, they have these hampers that if you buy anything in the shop more than, I think it's not here anymore, but it used to be where if you buy anything above 150 Rand, you could enter into the thing. All you had to do was enter the barcode. And then once you've done dealings with them, be it ordering online or in person, then you used to then qualify to win like a food parcel bundle to the value of a certain amount of money. So I don't know if that counts.
Yes, it may work, it may not work, depending on the collaboration and the relationship between these countries. Because I'm just thinking of a CSR program that perhaps they can engage in. What I know is that they are able to maybe improve infrastructure, especially that lies along the borders, as countries, and because they want to facilitate trade. And you find that maybe, let me give you an example of the Kenya-Uganda border. You find that the lighting maybe along the border is not really sufficient enough. So maybe they can contribute towards installing some good lighting system to ensure that the security is heightened. I don't know, maybe somebody with the CSR in mind? Anybody with any corporate social responsibility in mind? Okay, so I think let me share the PowerPoint presentation. So I think in our last meeting, this is where we stopped. Did we stop at this point? So now we are supposed to look at trade facilitation as a public good. What is a public good? Let's begin by asking ourselves or defining a public good. What is a public good?
Doctor, public good is a good supply that no one can claim ownership of the good. So in essence, if you a good example of a public good would be street lights. No one can say they own that street light and where it shines. It's for everyone to use and everyone to see at night. It's also supplied through the government, and no one can physically determine how much they must pay for that good. Everyone just pays for it and can use it freely.
Yes, so this is a good whereby no individual can be excluded from using it or benefiting from it, and everyone can benefit from its use. I can see Njoki. A public good is a good or service that is both non-excludable and non-rivalry. So it is impossible to prevent people from using it. Yes, those are now the characteristics of a public good. Non-rivalry. More than one person can use the good without diminishing the ability of its use. And you cannot be excluded or restricted from using the goods. And just as has given us one example is the street lights. Any other example?
Dr. Highway, road.
The road.
The roads. You cannot say that this part of the road is mine or belongs to me or to certain people.
Excuse me, doctor. Now for us in Uganda, we have what we call Entebbe Express Highway. But to access it, you have to pay before. Is it a public good or?
Musa, I think for those are exceptional incidences, but still, as long as someone affords the 5,000, they are free to use the road. So it's a public good.
It is a public good,
Yeah.
And
as long as you have the money, you pay and pass.
That is it. And remember from the behavioral economics, you know, sometimes you need to put in place some institutions, just to ensure that these goods are not exploited, isn't it? So you can introduce a fee to ensure that the goods is well taken care of. So it is a public good, and it is free to everybody as long as you can afford. We also have those express, highways in Kenya, and those who can afford the amount of money demanded, or those who feel comfortable, or those who feel that they don't want to waste time in jams, they can always pay. So you are not deterred or excluded from using it. Eh? Now it's your choice. It's a decision on your side. Eh? Is that clear?
Yes, doctor.
So Alice, you're saying that some people dodge using such roads, eh? Why? Why would they dodge?
Doctor, some people just like they never want to pay, no matter how small the money is. Like they don't understand. I think they're not explained to like why do you really have to pay the 5,000, the 10,000. So in the end, even when the authority says they want to collect that money to maintain maybe such roads, they don't really collect as much money as they're supposed to, because the locals keep wondering, why do I have to pay for the road that is in my country?
But it depends now with the agency. Eh? If, for instance, you want to get to the airport within the shortest time possible, maybe your flight is about to leave, you can afford to use that. But you know, it depends on also the priorities. I know there are people who would prefer, you know, getting stuck in the jam for an hour or even 2 hours than use the express highway. So it depends on their priorities at the end of the day. So trade facilitation, of course, involves the creation of agreements which supports these public goods, the supply of public goods. And these goods, at the end of the day, all stakeholders interested in the good should benefit. And the costs must be shared to maintain these goods. And that is why you find that the government introduces taxes for maintenance of these public goods. Ideally, these taxes should be utilized properly to ensure that these goods are maintained. But of course, that's normally not the case. They should be honest. Requires some good leadership. And this should be a regional leadership. For instance, if you look at even the Zimbabwe and the South African border, there are certain public goods that they share. Hanko, can you give us examples of some of the public goods that you share with Zimbabwe or Botswana?
Doctor, I'm not sure. I've actually never been to Botswana, so I'm really not sure.
And Zimbabwe, just think of a public good that is commonly shared by these two nations.
I don't know, maybe some of the other South Africans can help me.
Yes,
I think it's the road, doctor. That's
it
what
is the
we
road,
share. Yes.
So who maintains the road?
It depends on which side you're on. So if we at the border between South Africa and Botswana or Zimbabwe, South Africa will maintain the South African road, and then Zimbabwe will also maintain the Zimbabwean road, even though it's a public good. But everybody has to be responsible for making sure that the infrastructure is well in place. I don't know if it makes sense. So if there are potholes, the government from both countries need to make sure that the trade goes smoothly and there are no potholes.
But they must agree on how to maintain these goods, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
I've always heard of no man's land. I don't know what happens in a no man's land. Who maintains such kind of goods? Have you ever heard of people saying that this is a no man's land?
Doctor, I know personally there's a large no man's land between Namibia and South Africa on the southern border post, the most southerly border post in Namibia. And I'm also unaware of who maintains that road between. I think it's like 5 or 6 Ks between the two border posts.
So I think in such a case, the countries that are of interest must be able to agree on how to maintain such a good. They will, of course, share the costs. So that demands for some honesty. It demands for some leadership, roles to be played accordingly to ensure that they agree and maintain those goods. Any other public good that you're aware of? So do you think that maintaining these public goods can enhance trade facilitation? Hello?
Yes, Dr. Edders, they do. If they're not properly well managed and maintained, it will make trade way much slower. And I think also in South Africa, what we normally see is that you find that trucks are at the border for like more than 24 hours or close to 24 hours because of the roads are not in good condition. So now, if there were any issues with the infrastructure, you can imagine how quickly it would arrive to its destination, and that product will also be in good condition when it arrives there.
Yes, so at the end of the day, they must also ensure that these resources are well utilized. People utilize these resources, properly. They don't misuse these resources because, sometimes these goods can be misused by people. People don't really care because, after all, it is a public good. It is not my property. So they don't feel a pinch even if they misuse the goods. So it is upon these countries to ensure that these goods are well maintained. Sometimes back I used to ask myself, why would people charge for, toilets, going to the toilet and you have to pay money? But I later on realized that these toilets, they need to be cleaned, they need to be maintained. So who will do the work? And it is a public, most of the public toilets, the way people just go and they misuse the toilets. So I later on appreciated the fact that, of course, sometimes you pay, like in Europe, I remember you pay one euro. And when I convert it into Kenya shillings, it's a lot of money. And I asked myself, this is so much, So I'm assuming that you are traveling, and you even stop 3 times. That is a lot of money at the end of the day. But of course, it is necessary to introduce such kind of fees. And that is why you find that even at these borders, there are certain fees that people must pay that goes into maintaining these goods. Is that clear?
Yes, doctor.
So this is the trader facilitation model, whereby we have the governments in place, the customs administration, the traders, and the travelers. And the government should ensure that they address some of the conflicts or the issues that arise, which are conflicting. Because remember, these are 2 countries or countries with different, perspectives. So they need to harmonize and ensure that there is minimal conflict. But then we also have the potential for corruption. There is a potential for corruption. And we know that sometimes even the government officials are the most corrupt. So, and they are unlikely to be caught. And they benefit from bribes. Does it happen in your countries? Hello? Have you witnessed corruptions in the government, whereby the government officials are the ones who are corrupt? They are the ones who are, sneaking in goods without paying taxes. They are the ones who pay bribes to sneak in firearms or certain products. Does it happen? Mercy? Or this is a sensitive issue topic to discuss?
Doctor, I think what you've said is very true, and these things happen in real life, but it's hard now to pinpoint that, like giving an example is really hard. But at the back of our minds, we really know these things happen and we see them daily on a basis. You hear those insecurities, something that tagged to the big people, really. So, but you have to keep back, and you can't bring them as a front. So yeah, they truly happen and they really exist, and these guys really do those things, especially the big people.
And sometimes if this customs administration do not cooperate, they can even be transferred. Your job is at stake. So it's a very tricky situation. And of course, we have the customs administration. They know their roles. They have the activities to undertake at the end of the day. But we also have some traders and travelers who have monopoly power. There are those who are, of course, uncertain about some of these regulations, and they exercise the discretion power. Others cannot really account for some of the activities. So you find that a multinational can influence even the prices of two countries. Maybe we have a multinational company that supplies goods, Kenya and Uganda, and they have the power to influence certain decisions. And these, again, can, of course, influence how trade, cross-border trade is undertaken. Do we have such kind of companies? Do we have multinational firms with monopoly power? Hello? Are you aware of any multinational company with a monopoly power that controls prices, controls the kind of goods to be supplied, and other decisions in different countries?
A company like that would be De Beers diamond mine in Namibia. De Beers is, I think, or there's another mining company, but De Beers controls the market on diamonds, especially in Southern Africa. And they control the prices, they control the amount being pulled out, and where and when the product gets shipped to.
So Nancy and Alice, they're talking about Coca-Cola. I know there are companies who really try to come up with the products, but they've not managed to beat these guys. So they influence the kind of products that they sell to the market and even the prices. So some of these traders and travelers, as I've mentioned, they may be uncertain. They don't have proper information to some of these regulations. And you find that they exercise their power. So they rely on discretion power. And others cannot also account for certain activities. So at the end of the day, it is important that all this information is taken into consideration and harmonized to ensure that trade across the borders can be done in a predictable manner. Is that clear? So this slide is about the innovations for improving cross-border trade, what is needed and some of the strategies that can be employed. For instance, the economy of scale. When you're engaging in cross-border trade, of course, you don't just produce, some few products. You need to now consider economies of scale. And this requires that you balance the goods from origin to the destination. Try to balance these products as you engage in economy of scale. You also need to integrate a logistics system, that is the insourcing versus the outsourcing, because we know, again, there is a lot that takes place in the logistics as these goods are moved from one country to the other country. So technology for end-to-end handling, and this is what we've been talking about, adapting certain techniques, which of course will promote, the commodity handling, so that these products can be monitored, they can be handled in the right way. Then providing appropriate transport and logistics infrastructure. This can be done through public-private partnership. Companies can partner with the government, and different governments can also partner. Again, ICT is very, very important, and because of digitalization, we want to digitalize information, services, and so on and so forth. Again, this can be achieved through public-private partnership. But then there could be other strategies that perhaps can work. Then capacity building, creating awareness to those involved in trade so that they are aware of some of these regulations and standardizations. So I don't know whether people are normally trained. How is capacity building in terms of creating awareness? Are you familiar with some of these regulations that are in place? Or do you have to search for the information by yourself?
Doctor, maybe my submission on this, on the capacity building and standardization. For example, I have seen, for example, organizations that are involved maybe in exportation, in those things of cross-border trade. For when we consider the formal cross-border trade, majorly can we say, how can I call these bodies? There are always those regulatory bodies. For example, those that issue the phytosanitary, they always have official lines of communication. And for example, there is a change in the systems, or there is a change, or there is something new that has come on board for people to adhere to. They will always put notifications. And for example, if there's a training, these people will always push emails, send notices that show where the training will be, how it will be done, and for how long. So they train people in those things. Thank you.
Yeah, some also provide the information in their websites so that whoever is interested can access the information. But I don't know whether the sensitization is done, at different levels. So again, partnership is very, very important. That is promoting domestic and international partnerships. So you find that there are traders who have forged some partnership. There are countries that have forged partnership, and that again can improve cross-border trade. So do you think all these are capable of improving cross-border trade? Among others, Can this contribute to making cross-border trade faster and
Yes,
cheaper?
doctor. Yes,
Hmm?
Yes,
doctor.
Doctor.
And even enhance tax collection? And of course, even maintain the high security levels, as well as they also ensure that the speed of operations is faster. And what about transaction costs? Can this reduce or lower the transaction costs?
Doctor, I think it's a double-edged sword. On the one side, the more of these type of strategies we implement, the more hands we need to do it, because it's very difficult to expect, I want to say, one or two organizations or just one department of the government to really implement all of this. There's definitely going to be a need for like a multifaceted approach to the implementation here. So it's going to be somewhat expensive until it gets to a point where once the systems are established and it's implemented and it can then only has to then be maintained. Only then do I believe will it get to a point where it will become cheaper. But since some of this does not currently exist, or most of it does, but in terms of between countries, especially if you're thinking of expanding and collaborating with other countries, I think for now it's still just going to be a bit costly, but at least it's costs worth incurring because I think the benefits will outweigh the costs. But for now, I think in order to establish it, it's still going to be somewhat costly.
And I think if people have engaged in this kind of trade more than even twice or thrice, they are now familiar with the information, and this can also minimize on the costs. They have forged relationships. They have screened the different parties, and they can ascertain whether these are genuine people or not. So at the beginning, of course, you expect the transaction cost to be high, but with time, as they familiarize themselves with that sector and the activities, you find that these costs might go down. So solutions to some of the trade problems. By the way, what are some of the challenges of cross-border trade in Africa? Before we look at the solutions. Based on your experiences, the country experiences, are there challenges that perhaps these parties are facing or countries are facing?
Yes,
Doctor, I
doctor.
definitely think, oh, sorry, Alice, you can go first.
Okay, I think if poor infrastructure, the roads, most of these roads are not in good condition. I can also mention about the insecurities on the road. Sometimes there's safety that occurs. Yes, Hanko, please go on. Let me not finish.
All right. Doctor, so I definitely think at the current moment, there is definitely a lack of infrastructure. I think definitely when we look at cross-border collaboration, just like a supply chain where you have areas where you store goods, and then when there's a shortage, they communicate that they can just, disperse or quickly dispatch some of the stock. I think there's definitely some lack of infrastructure at the moment. So goods have to travel very far to enter some of the markets, where I think obviously if we improve some of our like warehouse development closer to some of these countries, it's going to make the cost of the transport also quite a bit better. I think in terms of customs and border procedures, at the current moment, it's very lengthy. So you'll see, for example, most of the videos that I've seen where the trucks are going out to Botswana or they're going out to some of these other countries that we actually participate in cross-border collaboration with or trade, they actually stand and wait for hours and hours on end, sometimes days, where there are hundreds of trucks in a queue. So I think if those procedures can be reduced, that everything can maybe be put on, or that the technological infrastructure can also be improved, that, you know, they just scan a QR code and they can see where the truck is from, who is the driver, that all of the adequate documents are all linked to that barcode. I think that will help quite a lot. I think at the moment, there's a lot of informal trade also happening. So at the moment, it's an easier way. It's kind of like path of least resistance that we've learned in physics, that, you know, it's less, or it's more cost efficient to kind of go that way at the moment, because it's easy to just smuggle through a bit of the product, sell it, and then go back and just do that a couple of times, than trying to go through the border post where it's going to take you a day or so to actually get through, and by then maybe your goods will be spoiled through going through the whole thing. And I think maybe the fact that different countries have got different health standards, or not necessarily different health standards, but I think in terms of, you know, the concerns where the goods are not allowed to, for example, cold refrigerated goods that are on those refrigerator units on the trucks, that it's not allowed to dip below, or it's not allowed to variate between more than, I think, 2% from what the minimum temperature is that it should be at all times. So maybe some countries might not be faced by that, but if you are going into a country that has very high health standards, it might be an issue, because now you've incurred the cost to travel with the goods all the way there. But then at the end of the day, you're going to have to go back because they won't accept the goods. I think for now, that's my submission. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Hanko. Number of points that you have put across. You've talked about the delay at the borders, and especially because of the tedious procedures. And that is why trade facilitation is very important, so that these procedures can be harmonized and standardized. And even digitalization that we talked about to ensure that they reduce some of the paperwork. You've also talked about, informal trade, of course, is really taking a toll on many countries, because they are missing on the revenues and from, trade. But then people prefer informal trade because of these tedious procedures. So they can just smuggle in whatever products they want, as long as maybe they bribe their way out. And then they are able to, move very fast and do their businesses within a very short period of time. Again, you talked about different countries having different quality and standards and health standards. And because of these varying standards, sometimes you find that even meeting those standards might be difficult. And that can also deter even some people from, engaging in cross-border trade. So I know that, for instance, we normally get fish from Uganda. The Ugandan fish is very, very nice. As we have exhausted, Kenyans have exhausted the fish, Lake Victoria. So many a times, the fish that is eaten, get from Uganda, and they normally transport these fish, using those large trucks, refrigerated trucks, and sometimes they transport them all the way to Mombasa, which is the farthest end of Kenya. And I normally wonder, by the time the fish gets there, is it still in the right shape, in the right form, or what happens? Maybe the Ugandans can tell us what normally happens. Mercy, Alice?
Doctor, that fish is actually safe. Remember, as you just said, that those trucks are refrigerated, so it's really safe. Maybe we can worry about the bit of freshness.
Yes, I'm worried of the distance, eh? The
But you have
distance from Kampala all the way to Mombasa, eh? By road.
Yeah, and it takes a good number of, I think, days. But it's always
Doctor,
safe.
It's always safe, just because, like, for example, when you store a produce for so long in a fridge, the can I say the quality kind of deteriorate? You
The
cannot
taste,
compare the taste actually, the taste of that produce. So the fish is, it's intact and it's okay, but we can say that the taste is deteriorated at some extent.
Yeah, so maybe they can improvise faster means, eh? They were talking of reviving the railway line, eh?
What of using air? Air transport, particularly
Yeah,
for fish.
but if they can revive the railway line and then they get, these fast moving trains, then they can also be able to address that bit. Yes, any other challenge?
Doctor, I'm wondering.
Before? Yes, Sam?
Does difference in currency play any challenge, bringing any challenge in cross-border? Difference in currency, does it bear any challenge?
Difference in?
Currency.
In currency.
Especially
it's normally a challenge, eh? That reminds me when we were from South Africa and I was with a Ugandan. So when we landed at the Kenyan airport and now we were to take a taxi and she was telling me that I don't have Kenyan shillings, I have Ugandan money. So I was telling her, why can't you go and change the Ugandan money then, eh? So that you can get the Kenyan shillings. But then she was like, your rates are not favorable. So again, such can also, influence trade. Somebody is talking about political instability. Yes, Pebi, can you talk to us? Kumalo, you've not heard your voice for some time.
Good morning, doctor. Yeah, political instability, sometimes it can be hard to trade. It can make trading like hard. For instance, in Nigeria, the Boko Haram, they just come out from nowhere and you find that you have to, maybe you are supposed, a company from SA is supposed to actually go and supply their stores in Nigeria. So it becomes like hard for them to go there because of like the interruption or like the instability in it.
Political instability, and you've given us a good example. And by the way, when we talk about cross-border trade, it's not just trade of goods only. We also have trade of services, expertise, and we have people moving to the other countries to offer some expertise. I remember there's a friend, the husband was a surveyor and he got a consultancy with the UN to demarcate land between, was it Nigeria and Congo, somewhere in between. And as they were winding up in the evening to, go home, and the Boko Haram guys just attacked them and, really tortured them and killed them. And that was the end. And they were just offering their expertise. So sometimes political instability, insecurity plays a big role. There are certain countries that you wouldn't even think of, trading with, like the Sudan. Which part of Sudan?
South Sudan.
the South Sudan, eh? Would you think of maybe engaging in some business or trade?
It has to be a risk embraced to the person intending to do business, doctor.
Yes, it is a risk, eh?
Actually,
Wood,
doctor, there are some. Sorry.
sorry, Miss. You can,
Yes, uncle?
Dr. Wood, geopolitical tensions not also play a role? I mean, if we think about now some of the wars that are breaking out in the world, if you are, for example, part of NATO or part of BRICS, you wouldn't necessarily be trading with some of the companies or some of the cross-border countries that are in support of any of the other countries that they're currently, for example, engaging in war with, for example. So if I had to make an example, I wouldn't necessarily, or a country wouldn't necessarily trade with another country that is closely affiliated with one of the countries currently in war. So, for example, if there was a country that we were trading with as South Africa, we wouldn't necessarily be able to trade with them or incur or engage in cross-border trade with if they are, for example, in support of the war against some of the other countries that's currently breaking out, or if they are in another I don't know, kind of like
They are supporting Ukraine or Russia, eh?
yes, something like that. Or if they trade closely with them, if they are part of their own little conglomerate.
So you also become hesitant, eh? To engage in some trade with them, eh?
Yes, Doctor,
It's
just
like
for any
enmity.
potential flashback or lashback that you will get for participating in it, because maybe you will now be associated with, you are now supporting the actions and so on, even though you're just trading goods.
Yeah, you don't want to be seen to be supporting that country, eh? To be relating with the country, eh?
Yes,
So
Doctor.
you can lose some, assistance. Yes, Pokane?
Oh, sorry, Doctor. I was saying that I think geopolitics disrupts the supply chain as a whole. As Hanko just mentioned everything, I was just wanting to add that it disrupts the supply chain. And also when it comes to foreign exchange, it's weird how in the African continent we have different currencies, whereas in the Europe, you might get that they only use one currency and they trade amongst each other. For us, instance, it's so difficult to trade amongst each other because of we don't have one currency, and that on its own it is impacting us a lot. Like in terms
Thank
of
you, Pokane,
revenue,
for that.
I think we are moving behind and slowly. But yes, there is the movement that they want African free trade. But I think to fix that, we have to make sure that the currency is the same in all African countries so that our trade becomes way much easier.
In Africa, we don't have common currencies. If you go to Europe, you'll find that euro is acceptable, is accepted widely. But for us, imagine, I remember there's a time I went to Tanzania, and you change money and you are given money that you cannot even carry, eh? And that is similar to Uganda, eh? The money that you are given is so much that you don't even know how to carry it, eh? You're almost requesting for a basket to carry the money, eh? And yet it is really valueless, eh? So I you even get confused. You don't know even how to transact with that kind of money, eh? I don't know you guys, your experience with the Tanzanians' monies and Ugandans' monies, eh?
No. The only experience that I've had was that I was supposed to receive, I don't know how much it is in your currency, but I was supposed to receive 800, but I think it was 40 euros. And that is equivalent to 800 in South Africa. And instead of getting that 40 euros, I only received 10 from that 40. So I think a lot really went to paying for the regulations and everything. And I was so mad because they were like, no, the bank called me, they're like, no, because of foreign currency and everything like that. So it also goes to that maybe the value of the money in the African continent is so much small compared to the European countries, because when I made that payment to the Europe, it was nice 800 rand, but now when it's supposed to come back, it's like not even, it's like 10% of what I paid.
What you paid, yes, eh? So the
It
value
was
is
very
quite low.
It
Yeah, so I
is.
agree with you. We need to come up with at least a common currency that we can trade with across the African countries. Rather than having these different currencies and converting them, you end up losing a lot of money, the costs, and so on and so forth. Eh? So I think that is good, well exhausted. We move to the last slide. So, of course, some of the solutions to these problems, which you have mentioned, harmonizing the procedures across borders and eventually the continent. We can harmonize this liberation scheme, the road transit, the common external tariffs can be harmonized, as well as other procedures and standards. And also the regional leaders should be at the forefront to lead some of these initiatives. If our leaders are in good terms, they are in unison, they have got a good relationship, then it's also very easy to establish some of these initiatives. Then commitment of the regional and international players. So as a region, we should be committed maybe to ironing out some of these problems, to developing procedures and agreeing on these procedures that can facilitate cross-border trade. We need capacity building, ensure that we sensitize those who are involved in trade, those who are interested parties, facilitate them with the right information, sensitize them on some of these regulations or regulatory frameworks, and so on and so forth. The yellow card, again, talking about the insurance, motor vehicle insurance, as well as the other thing that I thought of is the driving license. If I have a driving license, am I allowed to drive in South Africa or in Uganda or in Tanzania?
No, doctor.
Yeah, I don't think so, doctor.
If I have my Kenyan license, can I drive if I get to Uganda? There are international DL, But I think things have been flexed a little bit, because the other week I saw one of our members when we traveled to Joburg. So when she got to the airport, she hired a vehicle. And later on, I asked her, how do you have a South African driving license? She told me, no, I'm using Kenyan license. Then I asked her, how? Huh? How is it possible? She was like, there's no problem as long as you follow the rules, you can drive. And I was shocked,
But maybe, doctor, maybe she's familiar with the roads in South Africa. Or she's been there before. Because
of
I
course,
don't think
she's guided by the GPS.
How about the rules? How
the
can
rules, yeah.
The rules, the rules, they are kind of, standard across, They are kind of similar to our rules, You know that if it is green, if it is amber, if it is red, so they are kind of similar. But then even this yellow card that they keep on insisting, I don't know whether it works because you take it once in a lifetime. Is it really important? Do you think this yellow card is important? Or
It could be, Doctor.
upgrading? Mm-hmm.
I think maybe one thing that we must all or most countries should consider doing is just to revert to a standardized kind of test that regardless of which country you end up going to, that you are still, if you are acknowledged that you are a competent driver, you don't have any ailments of the eyes, of hearing, of whatever else, then you should be able to just drive without any other issues. So I think maybe maybe it is important to start standardizing this because, yeah, maybe that will root out some of the corruption in our traffic department. But I also think,
Test, eh?
yeah, and also, for
test when
example,
you arrive. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, Doctor.
Okay. So Nancy is telling us that in case you go to countries where they use the left side seats for drivers, especially in Europe. In Europe, they use the left side seats for drivers, and you know it is really confusing. Even the lanes are totally different. In that case, it means that you keep. Do they normally keep right or left? So that can be confusing, and I think in such a case, you must get an international DL.
Well, Doctor, in that case, they would keep right if they use the left-hand side of the car, because in South Africa, we drive on our seat is on the right-hand side, but we keep left and pass on the right. So over there, they keep right and pass on the left.
Yes, so, and it can be confusing. Imagine you go to such a country and you are driving, you'll always find yourself on the left side of the road. So the other thing is that these countries can try and resolve the challenges of bureaucracy, corruption, delays in processing trade documents. Sometimes it takes ages, even to get a trader license. So I think they can minimize these timelines. Anything else?
No,
we
Doctor.
talked about capacity enhancement, among other things. So I think with that, you are now knowledgeable this area, cross-border trade. You can always read more articles on cross-border trade. But of course, even if you read them, they will just dwell on some of the issues that we have mentioned. But it is good just to deepen your understanding by reading articles. Any other question? Any other issue, concern?
No, Doctor.
I saw somebody sent me a message yesterday. You know, sometimes I'm normally very packed, daytime, especially yesterday. I was very busy and I saw somebody sent me a message. What was it all about?
So, Doctor, maybe
Yes.
as you're looking for the message, I just wanted to use this opportunity to ask, like, our colleagues from South Africa. So, when we're traveling from home, of course, they had advised us maybe you can get runs before you get to South Africa and all that. But like most of us were like, I think as long as you get like US dollars, it's some sort of universal currency. When reach South Africa, you can just, exchange to rands. So we were really shocked to reach here, and it's like, I think the most difficult thing I've experienced. Literally, like, no one is willing to exchange the dollars. And then, like, doctor, we're stuck for almost a week. Like, actually, that first whole week, like, we're stuck, no money to use. And, like, the banks, like, they just keep dodging you. So, like, I'm just wondering what happens here, because for us in Uganda, for example, when you have a dollar, it's as easy as just getting to the Forex Bureau and you exchange the money and you get the Ugandan currency. So, like, I just keep wondering why is it very hard for these guys here to exchange the dollars?
So in recent years, we have had incidents where people end up exchanging like fake money that's almost like, but it's reproduced so closely to the real thing. Even the watermark is somewhat almost there, that you think, okay, this is just maybe an old note. So even when I went to the UK last year, I came back with about, I think, 50 pounds. I still have the 50 pounds with me because they refuse to accept any coins. They refuse to accept any notes. I don't know if, for example, some of the fiscal policies have updated that actually limit their ability to kind of exchange it. But I know one of the motivating factors that the lady at the Forex Bureau told us was that they are now not willing to really accept many other notes based off of the fact that they had received fake notes before. So now they're just very hesitant to transfer, even though I personally would have thought, when you exchange dollars and so on, it's quite a reliable currency, since that's like one of the baseline, I think, monetary forms in the world. So it's very difficult. Most of our banks also don't accept or don't really want to do this exchange program. Only some of the main branches that they have, because what's happened is if someone has gone and transferred money, let's say, or exchanged dollars or euros for rands, then it would kind of like be like a syndicate that would target the bank to rob them of that money. Because they know that they've recently come into like a large amount of that money. So yeah, there's very organized crime syndicates at the moment that are targeting the banks in this way.
Yeah, but I think it also depends. There are certain bureaus that exchange. I was in Santon, Santon City, and they exchanged for us the dollars without any queries, with ease. As long as you produce your passport, and they exchange for us the dollars. I didn't encounter any problem. They were not hesitant to exchange for us. So again, it depends on where you are exchanging the money. Maybe you could go to Menelin. I don't know if you can get a Forex Bureau. Menelin?
So there isn't a Forex Bureau there, but I know there was a Forex Bureau in Hatfield not too long ago. That's where I went originally to go and transfer some of the money, but they were only willing to accept like notes. They weren't willing to accept any coins of any sort. I don't know why.
Yeah, so maybe you can try other bureaus, Alice, try out other bureaus, but I know not Hatfield, Santon, there's a bureau that exchange Forex currency.
No, Doctor, actually, we were able to get some allowance, so we are good to go. Just that first week was really like a hassle.
Ah, okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
But
Hanko.
at least you've learned a lesson, that next time, don't be that certain,
Yeah, I really did. I did.
So at least it is good to have even some few, rands or the local currency, the country you're going to, so that you can. But I think with you, I don't know why.
I've learned quite a lot of things, because even one of our colleagues got malaria, and up now he has not gotten medication. Because these guys say they don't have malaria in their country, so literally malaria is not a thing. You really have to struggle.
Yes.
Like it's yeah. So
That is a tropical disease, eh? You didn't carry the malaria tablets and some
Doctor, we
painkillers, eh?
we didn't carry anything, and yesterday he was really badly off, but he finally got a lab where he could test. So today he made an appointment with the doctor. I think by end of that day maybe he would have gotten some medicine.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
In
so
some countries you are even isolated, eh? Malaria, if you are from tropical countries and they suspect that you have malaria, you'll find yourself in your own ward, eh? And they don't have the medication. So it's normally good to carry some of those medicine. Eh? So that is it. So thank you. Yes, the question was about the submission of a project. Eh? I think it was clear. It is the last week. Is it the last week of the semester? When we will present our projects?
yes, doctor.
Yes, so that is clear. It's the last week of the semester.
Last week.
Huh?
Just requesting maybe you speak more about the project.
Yes, the last week, the presentation, somebody was inquiring when you should submit the project. Eh?
Submission is earlier and presentation is
Submission
later,
is earlier, then presentation is?
Later in the last week.
Later the last week, yes.
Submission is earlier.
So submission should be done the second last week, eh?
Okay.
Submit it the second last week. Okay, so thank you guys. So have a lovely day.
Hello, doctor.
Thank you, Doctor. You too.
Okay.
Thank
Doctor,
you, Doctor.
please remind,
Lovely day too.
Yes, Mercy?
please remind us about the semester test. You said when is it again?
There?
The semester test, when is it again? The second semester test?
We talked of, is it next week or next week on Tuesday?
Oh, okay.
Let me just confirm, eh?
Is it from chapter 5, lecture 5?
Next week on Tuesday.
So, Doctor, it will just be on the governance lecture that we had in the institutional economic lecture and how that incorporates to the supply chain and the cross-border. And then obviously what we cover
Yes,
tomorrow.
where we stopped, eh? Where we began, eh? The second session after
Right.
the cut, eh? The previous cut.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Yes. Okay, thanks. Thanks. Good day.
Good day to Doctor. Thanks.